The divorce agreement slid across the polished conference table with a whisper so soft it almost hid the sound of my heart breaking. "I'll be another 20 minutes," Evelyn said into her phone, smiling in a way I hadn't seen directed at me in years. "Don't wait outside. I'll come down." She ended the call, finally looking at me. Not with guilt, not with hesitation, only impatience. "I'm sorry you had to wait." The apology wasn't for 5 years of a marriage that had slowly become a waiting room. It was because I had been sitting here for 40 minutes while she finished another call. I lowered my eyes to the papers. So this is really happening. It should have happened a long time ago. The words landed cleanly, almost gently. Somehow that hurt more. Outside the glass walls of the law office, rain painted silver lines across the city skyline. People hurried home carrying umbrellas, chasing warmth. I couldn't remember the last time home had felt warm. The lawyer cleared his throat. "Mr. Carter, if you have any questions regarding the property division." "No." Evelyn looked surprised. "No." I said no. She frowned. "You aren't going to argue?" I almost laughed. For years I had argued. When she missed anniversaries because her startup partner needed her. When she canceled family dinners because investors came first. When she forgot birthdays. When she promised vacations that never happened. When she told me, "Just wait a little longer." Always longer. Always tomorrow. Always after one more project. One more funding round. One more crisis. Until I realized I had spent years waiting for someone who never planned to arrive. "I don't want the apartment," I said quietly. The lawyer blinked. "But it's jointly owned. You can keep it." Evelyn stared. "The investment accounts? They're yours." "The lake house. I've already signed it over." Confusion replaced her certainty. "Lucas." I picked up the pen. "I'm tired." Nothing dramatic. Nothing loud. Just true. The signature flowed across the final page. 5 years of marriage disappeared beneath black ink. The lawyer carefully gathered the documents. "It will be finalized after the mandatory waiting period." Waiting period. I almost smiled at the irony. I had already spent enough years waiting. I stood. "So this is goodbye." Evelyn hesitated for the first time all afternoon. "Take care." I nodded once. "You too." I walked toward the elevator. She didn't follow. The doors closed between us. Only then did I realize I hadn't cried. 3 weeks later, the office lobby buzzed with congratulations. $1 billion valuation. Mr. Ryan deserves a celebration. Champagne glasses clinked. Reporters crowded around Ryan Brooks. Visionary entrepreneur. Business prodigy. The man who had built the company beside Evelyn. The man everyone insisted was just a colleague. He accepted another handshake before his eyes landed on me. "Lucas." I offered a polite nod. "Congratulations." He smiled with practiced humility. I heard about the divorce. News traveled quickly among people who enjoyed watching lives unravel. "I'm sorry." "No, you're not." His smile faltered. You don't have to pretend." Silence stretched between us. Finally he sighed. "I never wanted anyone to get hurt. But someone always does." He had no answer. Before leaving, he spoke again. "She isn't doing well." I stopped walking. "What does that have to do with me?" Ryan looked genuinely surprised. "You loved her." I did. Past tense. It felt strange. And strangely peaceful. "I hope she finds whatever she's been searching for." Then I left. Behind me, conversations resumed. In front of me, rain had finally stopped. My phone vibrated as I reached my car. "MOM." I answered. "Hello. Have you eaten?" "I was about to." "You sound tired." "I am." She was quiet for a moment. Then, "Come home this weekend." Home. The place I had avoided because every visit became another conversation about fixing my marriage. "It won't be awkward. We won't mention her. My mother never lied. If she promised that, I'll come." She exhaled softly. "Good." After hanging up, I rested both hands on the steering wheel. For the first time in years, someone had invited me somewhere without asking me to wait. I started the engine. As the city lights blurred across the windshield, I made a silent promise. No more chasing people who kept walking away. No more explaining my worth. No more standing in doorways hoping someone would turn around. That chapter was over. I simply didn't know the past had one final page left to write. My parents' house smelled exactly the way I remembered. Fresh tea, old books, jasmine blooming beneath the living room window. Nothing had changed. Except me. Mother placed another bowl of soup in front of me. "Eat. I already have enough." "You've lost weight." "Dad." My father looked over his newspaper without lifting his head. She's right. Traitors. For the first time in months, I laughed. A small laugh, but real. Mother smiled without saying anything. She had always believed healing began with ordinary moments. Not speeches, not advice, just warm meals and familiar silence. Halfway through dinner, the doorbell rang. Father frowned. We aren't expecting anyone. He opened the door, then froze. My stomach tightened before I even looked up. Evelyn stood outside. Her umbrella dripped rainwater onto the porch. She looked exhausted. Not physically, emotionally, like someone who had spent days arguing with herself. Mother's smile disappeared. What are you doing here? Her eyes found mine. I wanted to speak with Lucas. Father answered before I could. He's eating. I'll wait. No. The word came from me. Everyone looked over. I slowly folded my napkin. There isn't anything left to discuss. Her lips parted. I only need 5 minutes. You had years. Silence. The clock on the wall ticked louder than usual. I know. No. I stood. You don't. She flinched. I waited outside hospitals while you attended investor dinners. Her breathing became uneven. I waited through birthdays. I know. I waited through anniversaries. I was building our future. Our future. I smiled sadly. You never noticed I wasn't in it. Mother quietly placed a hand on my father's arm, stopping him from interrupting. This wasn't their conversation. It belonged to the two people who had destroyed something together. Evelyn looked down. I made mistakes. You made choices. They're the same. No. I walked toward the entrance. Close enough to see the dark circles beneath her eyes. Close enough to remember loving every tiny detail of her face. Memory was cruel. It preserved warmth long after the fire died. I came because. Her voice cracked. I finally went back to the apartment. So. It was empty. Yes. You took everything that mattered. I looked at her quietly. No. I left almost everything. She blinked. The furniture. The paintings. The books. The kitchen. I left all of it. Then what did you take? I met her eyes. Myself. She stopped breathing for a second. That single sentence hurt her more than shouting ever could. I thought. She whispered. I thought you'd always come back. There it was. The truth neither of us had spoken. She had never fought to keep me because she believed she never had to. I would always wait. Always forgive. Always return. Until one day, I didn't. I won't. Rain fell harder behind her. She wiped at her face. I couldn't tell whether it was rainwater or tears. It wasn't Ryan. I remained silent. We never. She searched desperately for words. There wasn't an affair. I know. Her head jerked upward. You knew? I trusted you. Then why? Because betrayal isn't only sleeping with someone else. She stared at me. You gave him your time. My voice stayed calm. Your attention. Another step. Your first call every morning. Another. Your last message every night. I shook my head. You didn't cheat on my body. I looked at the wedding ring I no longer wore. You abandoned my place in your life. Nothing more needed to be said. She finally understood. The tears came without restraint. I'm sorry. I believed her. That was the tragedy. She meant every word. Just years too late. I opened the front door wider. Not to invite her inside. Only because she was blocking the exit. I'm going for a walk. She stepped aside instinctively. As I passed her, she whispered, Is there really no chance left? I paused beneath the porch light. Without turning around, I answered quietly. After years of silence. My voice disappeared into the rain. I closed that chapter forever. I walked into the night. Behind me, I heard her crying for the first time since I had known her. I didn't look back. Not because I hated her. Because some goodbyes only become real when you refuse to witness them. A pair of headlights slowed at the end of the street. The driver rolled down the window. Lucas. I recognized the voice immediately. It belonged to Daniel Shun, my former mentor, a man who had disappeared overseas 3 years earlier. His expression was unusually grave. I've been trying to find you. Something in his tone erased the quiet satisfaction I'd carried all evening. There are things about Ryan's company. He glanced toward the house, where Evelyn still stood in the rain, that neither of you knows. My heartbeat slowed. What things? Daniel looked into the darkness behind us before speaking. Get in the car. His voice dropped to a whisper. If anyone sees us talking, they'll know I came back. The rain swallowed the rest of the street. I reached for the passenger door. The passenger door shut with a heavy thud, sealing me inside Daniel Shun's sedan while rain drummed against the roof. Daniel didn't start driving. Instead, he checked the rearview mirror twice before reaching into a worn leather briefcase. He pulled out a thick brown envelope. I wanted to hand this to you 3 years ago. He placed it on my lap. The paper felt heavier than it should have. What is it? Evidence. Against who? He looked at me. Not who. A pause. What? I frowned. He started the engine and slowly pulled away from my parents' neighborhood. Only after we merged onto the main road did he continue. Do you remember why I resigned from Apex Venture? Ryan Brooks' company. The official statement said health reasons. Daniel laughed quietly. A convenient lie. Streetlights flashed across his tired face. I left because I refused to sign financial reports that had been altered. My grip tightened on the envelope. Fraud. Creative accounting. That's still fraud. It becomes something much worse when investors lose hundreds of millions. I stared at him. If this is true, why didn't you expose it? Daniel's hands tightened around the steering wheel. I tried. He reached into his pocket and tossed an old flash drive onto the center console. The board buried it. What about the authorities? I was warned. He smiled bitterly. My wife had cancer at the time. The sentence explained everything. They promised to leave my family alone if I disappeared. So you left. I chose my wife. He didn't sound ashamed. Neither would I have been. And now? Daniel looked ahead. She passed away 6 months ago. Silence settled between us. I'm sorry. I've already buried the only person I couldn't live without. His voice remained steady. I'm not afraid anymore. The words carried no drama, only exhaustion. He glanced toward me. But I can't expose them alone. I looked down at the envelope. I don't work there anymore. I know. I've signed away everything. I know. Then why me? Because your name is still on documents they never expected anyone to notice. I opened the envelope. Inside were photocopies, internal approvals, email chains, board signatures. Then one page stopped me cold. Authorization, Lucas Carter. Signed. I had never signed it. That's a forgery. My heartbeat echoed in my ears. They used your digital authorization after Evelyn convinced you to grant temporary executive access. The memory struck instantly. 2 years earlier. Just until the audit is finished. I'll revoke it afterward. I hadn't questioned her. I trusted her. They never revoked it, Daniel said quietly. And every questionable approval afterward carried your name. A wave of nausea rose through me. So legally. You could become the fall guy. The rain outside suddenly felt much colder. An hour later we sat inside a quiet cafe that stayed open all night. Neither of us touched the coffee. What about Evelyn? I finally asked. Daniel sighed. I don't know how much she knows. Meaning, I believe she saw pieces. But not everything. He nodded. Ryan never fully trusted anyone. I leaned back. The image of Evelyn crying outside my parents' house replayed in my mind. Had she spent years chasing success, without realizing the ground beneath her was rotten? Daniel interrupted my thoughts. You still care? No. You hesitated. I don't want innocent people destroyed. There it is. He gave a faint smile. That's why I came to you. I looked out the rain-covered window. I won't protect Ryan. I didn't ask you to. I won't protect Evelyn either. Daniel nodded once. I'm asking you to protect yourself. The distinction mattered. Very much. I slid the envelope back toward him. Keep the originals. I already have. Then what do you need from me? He opened another folder. Tomorrow morning, the Financial Integrity Bureau begins reviewing Apex's overseas transactions. My eyebrows lifted. They finally noticed? Someone anonymous sent them evidence. You. Daniel neither confirmed nor denied it. But Ryan still has one advantage. What? He believes you'll stay silent. At 9 the next morning my phone rang. Unknown number. I answered. Lucas. Evelyn. I know you don't want to hear from me. You're right. Please. Her voice trembled. I need 10 minutes. I'm busy. You aren't. I am now. She inhaled shakily. Ryan disappeared. That made me stop walking. What? He didn't come home. He isn't my concern. He emptied company accounts. A cold feeling settled in my stomach. What did you say? There are investigators at headquarters. People hurried past me on the sidewalk. None of them knew how the world could change because of one sentence. They're asking for board members. And they're asking for you. The Financial Integrity Bureau occupied 3 floors of a steel and glass government building downtown. By the time I arrived, television vans already crowded the entrance. Microphones, cameras, Breaking news banners flashed across giant screens. Apex Venture under investigation. Employees exited the building with pale faces. Some cried. Others refused to answer questions. I walked through the crowd unnoticed until someone called my name. Mr. Carter. A woman in a Navy suit approached. She held up official identification. Senior Investigator Helen Zhou. I've been expecting you. Her expression suggested otherwise. You have. I've been told my name appears on documents I never signed. For the first time, surprise crossed her face. Who told you that? I believe that answer can wait. She studied me for several seconds, then gestured toward the entrance. This way. The interview room was surprisingly plain. Gray walls. One table. 3 chairs. A recorder sat between us. Helen pressed a button. For the record, please state your name. Lucas Carter. Were you employed by Apex Venture? Yes. Current position? None. When did you resign? 3 weeks ago. She flipped through a thick file. Interesting timing. It wasn't related to this investigation. What was it related to? My divorce. She looked up. Mrs. Evelyn Carter. Formerly. Another note. Then she placed a document in front of me. Recognition hit instantly. The forged authorization. Did you sign this? No. Can you prove that? I can tell you exactly where I was that day. She folded her hands. I'm listening. I described the charity banquet where my parents had been honored. The photographs. The live stream. The hundreds of witnesses. Helen quietly wrote everything down. When I finished, she pushed another folder toward me. We already verified your alibi. I blinked. You did. We wanted to see if your story changed. It didn't. No. She closed the folder. Which is encouraging. The tension in my shoulders eased only slightly. Then the door opened. An officer stepped inside. Ma'am. What is it? They found Ryan Brooks. Helen stood immediately. Alive. Yes. Where? The officer hesitated. He tried to leave the country. Helen grabbed her jacket. Keep Mr. Carter here. The two of them left. The room fell silent. 5 minutes later, the door opened again. Not Helen. Evelyn. She looked like she hadn't slept in days. What are you doing here? She closed the door behind her. They won't let me speak to you afterward. I remained seated. So speak. She walked closer, but stopped on the opposite side of the table. I didn't know. Her eyes were red. I swear I didn't know. I believe that much. You still signed reports. I trusted Ryan. The words echoed painfully, exactly as mine once had. I trusted you. I replied quietly. She lowered her head. I know. No. I shook my head. You finally understand. Tears rolled silently down her cheeks. I kept thinking there would be time. There usually is. I looked at the recorder between us. Until there isn't. She covered her mouth. I wanted to apologize properly. You already did. It wasn't enough. It never could be. Not because forgiveness was impossible. Because time wasn't. You couldn't return years someone had spent waiting. She looked at me one last time. If this destroys my career. She stopped herself. Then corrected the sentence. I deserve it. For the first time since our marriage ended, I saw the woman I had once loved. Not ambitious. Not defensive. Simply honest. There was nothing left for me to punish. Life had already begun doing that. The door opened again. Helen returned. Mrs. Carter. Evelyn stepped back immediately. I'm leaving. As she reached the doorway, she paused without turning around. I hope one day. Her voice almost disappeared. You remember me before I became someone who always chose tomorrow. Then she walked away. I watched the empty doorway for several long seconds. Not wishing she would return. Only mourning the version of us that never had. Helen quietly took her seat again. Mr. Carter. Yes. She opened a new file. We've recovered Ryan Brooks' laptop. She slid a photograph across the table. My eyes narrowed. The screen displayed a folder labeled with one familiar name. Lucas. Helen met my gaze. I think you'll want to know why your name deserved its own file. Helen didn't slide the laptop across the table. She didn't need to. The photograph alone was enough to make my pulse slow. A single folder. My name. Not contracts. Not legal. Not archive. Just Lucas. Open it, I said. Helen shook her head. I can't. Why? It hasn't been processed into evidence yet. She folded her hands. But I can tell you what our forensic team found before encryption locked the drive. I waited. There are recordings. My jaw tightened. What kind? Meetings. Financial. No. She watched my reaction carefully. Personal. 2 hours later, I walked out of the bureau carrying nothing except my phone and a headache that refused to fade. Daniel was waiting across the street. He read my face before I spoke. They found something. Yes. What? They aren't ready to tell me. Daniel frowned. That's unusual. They're protecting the investigation. We crossed toward a quiet park. Children chased pigeons across damp stone paths. Parents laughed. Someone played violin beneath an old oak tree. The ordinary peace felt unreal. I don't understand one thing, I admitted. If Ryan planned all this. I looked at Daniel. Why involve me? Daniel didn't answer immediately. Instead, he watched the children. Do you know what greedy people fear most? Losing money. No. He smiled sadly. Losing control. The sentence lingered. He couldn't control you? He couldn't control Evelyn. Daniel nodded. So he controlled the space between you. The realization struck slowly. Every canceled dinner. Every emergency meeting. Every weekend business trip. Every late-night conference. Every opportunity that kept Evelyn away from home. Had someone been arranging them? My stomach turned. No. Daniel looked at me quietly. I've spent years reviewing internal communications. You think he planned it? I think he benefited from it. That was somehow worse. Because manipulation didn't require romance. Only opportunity. That evening my phone buzzed. Unknown number. I almost ignored it. Instead, hello. Silence. Then breathing. Heavy. Uneven. Finally. It's me. Ryan. I stopped walking. I thought investigators had you. They do. His laugh sounded hollow. They're allowing one phone call. Why waste it on me? Because you deserve answers. I don't need them. You do. His voice lowered. I never loved Evelyn. I don't care. I wanted the company. The wind seemed to disappear. So I made sure nothing distracted her. I closed my eyes. What did you do? I praised her ambition. His laugh returned. I rewarded over time. Another breath. I convinced her every sacrifice was temporary. My fingers curled around the phone. You destroyed a marriage. No. His tone sharpened. I offered choices. She made them. I hated that he was right. He manipulated. She decided. Neither truth erased the other. So why call me? Because she finally knows. My heartbeat slowed. What? I told her everything. When I reached my apartment building, Evelyn was already there. She stood beside the entrance without an umbrella despite the steady rain. She didn't move as I approached. You spoke to him. She nodded. He confessed. I know. You knew? He called me. She laughed once. Not happily. The sound broke apart halfway through. I kept asking myself why nothing was ever enough. Rainwater dripped from her hair. I thought I was building something extraordinary. She looked directly into my eyes. I never realized someone kept moving the finish line. I remained silent. She wasn't asking for comfort, only telling the truth. I missed your birthdays. Yes. I skipped dinners. Yes. I ignored your calls because I believed every meeting mattered. Another nod. I remember. She covered her face with both hands. I don't know how to live with that. The pain in her voice was real, but so was mine. You will. She looked up. What? You'll live with it. I spoke gently, just as I lived with waiting. She flinched. Not because I raised my voice. Because I hadn't. Quiet truths left the deepest wounds. 3 days later, the investigation exploded across every major news channel. The leaked financial records spread online within hours. Shareholders demanded arrests. Former employees came forward. Anonymous whistleblowers appeared one after another. Each testimony added another crack. Ryan Brooks' empire began collapsing under its own weight. I watched everything from my small apartment. Without speaking publicly. Without interviews. Without statements. My phone rang constantly. Journalists. Former colleagues. Investors. I answered none of them. Consequences no longer needed my help. Mother visited that afternoon carrying homemade dumplings. She looked around the apartment. It's quieter. It is. Lonely. I considered the question. No. She smiled. Good. While setting plates on the table, she hesitated. Evelyn came to see me. I looked up. When? Yesterday. What did she want? Mother sighed. Nothing. I frowned. Nothing. She brought flowers. For what? Mother's eyes softened. To apologize. I didn't know what to say. She stood outside for almost an hour. Mother stirred the soup. Then she thanked me. Another pause. For treating her like family when she no longer deserved it. The room became very quiet. People often imagined regret as dramatic. It wasn't. Most of the time, it looked like standing outside someone else's home, holding flowers no one would keep. The following morning, Daniel called. They decrypted the laptop. What did they find? Meet me. The bureau's evidence room felt colder than before. Helen placed a pair of headphones beside a monitor. We need you to identify voices. She clicked play. Static. Then Ryan's voice. I'll handle Lucas. Another man laughed. He trusts too easily. I don't need to lie. Ryan sounded almost amused. I only need to keep Evelyn busy. A chair scraped. Someone asked, what if she notices? She won't. Papers rustled. People chasing success rarely count what they're leaving behind. My chest tightened. Another recording began. Ryan again. If Lucas resigns, we'll transfer everything before anyone checks authorizations. The second voice asked, and Evelyn? Ryan answered without hesitation. She'll blame herself. Silence filled the room. Helen stopped the recording. There are dozens more. Daniel stared at the table. I suspected. His voice trembled. I didn't know it was this deliberate. Neither had I. For years I believed I had simply lost to ambition. Instead, someone had quietly watered every misunderstanding, fed every delay, rewarded every absence. But one truth remained unchanged. Ryan never forced Evelyn to ignore me. He only made it easier. Helen slid another document forward. We found one final item. I looked down. It wasn't a financial record. It was an unsent email, drafted by Evelyn, dated almost 3 years earlier. Subject: resignation letter. My eyes widened. I've never seen this. Helen nodded. It was never sent. I opened the draft. The first line stole the air from my lungs. Lucas matters more than this company. I just realized it before it became too late. The email ended there. Never finished. Never sent. Never lived. I closed my eyes. Not because I wanted her back. Because somewhere in another version of our lives, she had almost chosen us. Almost. And sometimes, almost became the saddest word a person could carry. The courtroom was already full when I arrived. Reporters lined the back wall. Cameras waited outside the doors, forbidden from entering but eager for every expression that emerged. The investigation had become the country's favorite headline. The fall of a business icon. Billions under review. Former CEO to testify. I took a seat near the rear. Not because I was hiding. Because I no longer needed the front row in anyone else's story. Daniel sat beside me. You almost didn't come. I considered staying home. Then why are you here? I watched the empty witness stand. To hear the truth spoken where no one can bury it. The bailiff announced the judge. Everyone rose. Moments later, Ryan Brooks entered under escort. He no longer looked like the polished executive who had charmed investors and dominated boardrooms. His tailored suits were gone. The confidence that had once filled every room had vanished with them. He searched the courtroom instinctively. His eyes found mine. For a brief second, something crossed his face. Not hatred. Not anger. Recognition. He knew I had survived everything he built around me. He looked away first. The prosecution began methodically. Bank records. Internal transfers. Forged authorizations. Offshore accounts. Witness after witness confirmed the pattern. No dramatic shouting. No cinematic surprises. Only facts. Each fact became another brick added to the wall closing around Ryan. Then Helen Jo stepped forward. She placed several documents on the evidence table. The prosecution calls Mr. Lucas Carter. Daniel glanced toward me. You ready? I have been for years. I walked toward the witness stand. The oath was administered. The prosecutor approached. Mr. Carter, did you knowingly authorize these financial transfers? No. Did you grant temporary executive access to your former wife? Yes. For what purpose? To assist during an external audit. Were you informed that the authorization remained active? No. The prosecutor nodded. Did you benefit financially from these transactions? No. Did you know your identity had been used repeatedly? I discovered it only after the investigation began. Every answer was simple, clear, nothing exaggerated, nothing hidden. Ryan's attorney stood. Mr. Carter. He smiled politely. Isn't it true you hold personal resentment toward both Mr. Brooks and your former wife? I don't. You divorced because of conflicts involving the company. I divorced because my marriage ended. So you have motive. I have experience. The attorney paused. Experience? I met his gaze calmly. There's a difference. A few people in the courtroom lowered their eyes. The attorney changed direction. Did Mr. Brooks ever personally instruct you to commit fraud? No. So he never forced you? No. He smiled. No further questions. He believed the answer helped Ryan. Instead, it revealed something larger. Ryan never relied on force. He relied on trust. He borrowed other people's honesty until it became a weapon. When I stepped down from the witness stand, Evelyn entered the courtroom. A murmur spread through the gallery. She looked thinner, paler. Her confidence had disappeared beneath months of investigation and regret. She took the oath. The prosecutor asked quietly, "Mrs. Carter, did you know company funds were being manipulated?" "No." "Did you suspect anything?" "I suspected pressure." "What kind?" "Pressure to produce results." She swallowed. "I believed sacrificing my personal life was temporary." The prosecutor nodded once. "Who encouraged that belief?" She turned slowly toward Ryan. "He did." The room fell silent. Helen activated the courtroom projector. A video recording appeared on the large screen. Date. Time. Conference room 12. Ryan sat across from Evelyn. Neither knew the room's security camera had continued recording after everyone else left. Ryan leaned back in his chair. "Lucas understands." Evelyn smiled tiredly. "I hope so. He'll wait. I've been promising him that this quarter will be different." Ryan laughed softly. "There will always be another quarter." She frowned. "What do you mean? You want Apex to become the biggest investment firm in the country?" "Yes." "Then you can't afford distractions." "My husband isn't a distraction." Ryan's expression barely changed. "No." He paused deliberately. "He's your safety net." Evelyn looked confused. "You know he'll forgive you." Silence. "So focus on winning." The recording continued. "I'm starting to feel guilty." Ryan shrugged. "Guilt is temporary." He slid another folder toward her. "Success isn't." The screen froze. No one spoke. The judge looked toward Ryan. The prosecutor quietly said, "No further comment." The damage had already been done. Not because the recording proved an affair. It proved manipulation. Calculated. Patient. Cruel. Ryan had never stolen Evelyn's heart. He had convinced her she could always return to it later. The judge recessed for 1 hour before delivering preliminary findings. Outside the courtroom, reporters rushed toward everyone involved. Microphones appeared from every direction. "Mr. Carter, do you forgive your ex-wife? Did Ryan destroy your marriage? Will you sue Apex?" I kept walking. Someone stepped into my path. Evelyn. Security instinctively moved toward us before realizing neither of us intended to fight. She held a small envelope. "I know you don't owe me anything." I remained silent. "This isn't a request." She offered it with trembling hands. "I just wanted you to have it." I accepted the envelope. Nothing more. She smiled sadly. "I won't ask you to read it today." She turned to leave, then stopped. "You once told me." She looked toward the courthouse doors. "That betrayal wasn't always another person." I nodded. "I finally understand." There were no tears this time. Only acceptance. She walked down the courthouse steps alone. No cameras followed for long. They were already chasing the next headline. I opened the envelope after she disappeared into the crowd. Inside was only one page. No excuses. No explanations. Just one sentence written neatly in blue ink. "Thank you for loving the version of me that I never protected." I folded the paper carefully and placed it back inside. Not because it changed anything. Because some apologies deserve to be preserved, even when they arrive too late. Behind me, the courtroom doors opened once more. The judge returned. The final ruling echoed through the packed chamber. Ryan Brooks was found liable for orchestrating financial fraud, document forgery, and conspiracy to deceive investors. Asset seizures were ordered immediately. Criminal proceedings would continue. As officers placed him in handcuffs, Ryan looked toward me one final time. He opened his mouth as if to speak. I simply nodded once. Not in triumph. Not in forgiveness. Only in farewell. He lowered his eyes. For the first time since I had known him, he had nothing left to control. The first Monday after the verdict arrived with no reporters outside my apartment. No breaking news alerts. No unfamiliar numbers filling my phone. The silence felt unfamiliar. For years, silence had meant waiting for someone to call. Now it meant peace. I made coffee, opened the balcony door, and watched the city wake beneath a pale autumn sky. Construction cranes moved in the distance. Cyclists crossed the riverside bridge. Life had continued while I believed mine had stopped. I smiled at the thought. Maybe life had been waiting for me to catch up. My phone buzzed. "Mom, have you eaten?" I'm drinking coffee. That isn't breakfast. I know. You'll come this weekend? I'll be there. She hesitated. Someone else might be. I frowned. Who? Your father invited Daniel. That made me laugh. He already adopted him? He keeps pretending he didn't. Saturday afternoon arrived with bright sunshine. Daniel stood in my parents' backyard trying, and failing, to assemble a wooden garden bench. Father folded his arms. You've been an executive your whole life. Daniel sighed. It shows. I picked up the instruction manual. You've attached the legs backward. He stared at the bench. So I have. Father burst into laughter. For several minutes, the three of us wrestled with bolts and crooked boards while Mother watched from the porch, shaking her head. You men could negotiate billion-dollar investments. She smiled. But one bench defeats all of you. The laughter echoed across the yard. It struck me then. No one here expected anything from me. I wasn't solving a crisis. I wasn't proving my loyalty. I wasn't apologizing for someone else's choices. I was simply present. The realization settled warmly inside me. Daniel noticed. You look different. I feel different. You've stopped carrying something. I looked toward the old maple tree in the corner of the yard. I finally realized I can't spend my life mourning a future that never happened. Daniel nodded. That's harder than revenge. It is. Because revenge keeps people connected. He handed me another bolt. Peace lets them go. 2 weeks later, I accepted an offer from a nonprofit foundation that helped small family businesses recover after fraud and bankruptcy. The salary was lower than anything Apex had ever paid. The office was smaller. The furniture mismatched. But every project solved a real problem. Every client left with hope instead of empty promises. On my first day, the director, Grace Lynn, walked me through the office. We don't measure success by profit. What do you measure? She smiled. How many families sleep better because of our work? I looked around. No glass towers. No luxury conference rooms. No executives competing to speak the loudest. Just ordinary people trying to rebuild ordinary lives. Somehow, it felt extraordinary. Near lunchtime, Grace placed a thick folder on my desk. Your first case. I opened it. A local furniture workshop had nearly collapsed after a partner secretly diverted funds. The owner's handwritten note rested on top. I don't need someone to save my company. I need someone honest enough to tell me whether it's worth saving. I read the sentence twice, then smiled. Honesty. Not perfection. Not ambition. Just honesty. For the first time in years, I looked forward to Monday. Winter arrived quietly. The court cases continued without me. Appeals were filed. More executives accepted plea deals. New evidence surfaced almost every month. I read about it over breakfast, then folded the newspaper and went to work. The headlines no longer owned my mornings. One snowy evening, Grace stepped into my office. You're still here? I'm finishing a report. She leaned against the door. You know, today is your 6-month review. I forgot. I noticed. She handed me an envelope. Inside was a letter confirming my promotion. You've helped recover 12 family businesses. I looked up. 12. You also convinced 3 owners not to make emotional decisions they'd regret. She smiled. Apparently, you're very good at helping people walk away with dignity. I couldn't help smiling. I learned from experience. She didn't ask what I meant. Some stories didn't need to be told. A week before New Year's Eve, Mother called again. This time I'm not asking. I laughed. That's serious? Very. You'll attend the community charity dinner. I don't like crowds. You'll survive. Father's voice echoed somewhere in the background. Tell him refusing isn't an option. I surrendered. I'll be there. The town hall glittered with warm lights and simple decorations. Children ran between tables. Local musicians played old songs near the stage. Nothing about the evening felt grand. That was exactly why I enjoyed it. I had just accepted a cup of tea when someone stopped beside me. Lucas. I turned. Evelyn. She wore a plain navy coat instead of designer brands. No expensive jewelry. No assistants. No hurried phone calls. Just a quiet woman carrying a donation box for the local literacy program. For a moment, neither of us spoke. Then she smiled gently. I volunteer here every Wednesday. I didn't know. I don't advertise it. She glanced around the hall. I've been trying to spend more time where results aren't measured in numbers. There was no performance in her voice. No attempt to impress me. Only truth. I'm glad. She nodded. I almost didn't come tonight. Why? I heard you might be here. I waited. I wasn't afraid you'd reject me. A faint smile touched her lips. I was afraid I'd interrupt your peace. The word surprised me. Months earlier, she would have asked for another chance. Now, she respected the distance. You didn't. Relief crossed her face. Thank you. A little girl tugged at Evelyn's sleeve. Miss Evelyn, they're waiting. I'm coming. She looked back at me one last time. I hope your new life is everything I failed to give you. I answered honestly. It isn't. For the briefest moment, sadness flickered across her eyes. Then I continued. It's something neither of us understood back then. She waited. It's peaceful. She closed her eyes for a second before smiling. I'm happy you found it. There was no bitterness. No lingering hope. Only quiet acceptance. She walked toward the children, laughing softly as they pulled her toward the stage. I watched for a moment before turning back to my tea. The past no longer called loudly. It had finally learned to whisper. Spring arrived with the scent of fresh rain and blooming magnolias. Almost a year had passed since the day I signed the divorce papers. The city looked the same. I didn't. The apartment that had once felt like a temporary shelter had become a home. Books filled the shelves. Photographs of my parents and friends replaced empty walls. The dining table no longer collected unopened takeout containers. Some evenings Daniel stopped by carrying terrible coffee and excellent conversation. Other nights Mother insisted on bringing enough food to feed an army. I stopped arguing. Some battles deserved to be lost. One Friday afternoon, Grace knocked gently on my office door. You have a visitor. I wasn't expecting anyone. I don't think he expects anything either. I stepped into the reception area. Ryan Brooks sat alone. He wore plain prison transport clothing beneath a dark coat. Two correctional officers waited several feet away. His hair had turned noticeably gray. He looked older than a year. Far older. He stood when he saw me. They gave me 15 minutes. I remained where I was. What do you want? He gave a tired smile. You still ask direct questions. I learned to. He nodded. I suppose I helped with that. Neither of us sat. Neither of us offered a handshake. Finally he spoke. They're transferring me next week. I read the news. I wanted to tell you something before that. I said nothing. I used to believe people were predictable. His eyes wandered toward the window. They all wanted something. Money. Power. Recognition. So I offered them shortcuts. He laughed bitterly. They usually accepted. I folded my arms. And me? You confused me. How? You weren't ambitious enough. The answer surprised me. I thought you'd eventually resent Evelyn for choosing work. He lowered his eyes. I expected you to become angry. I did. I expected you to expose us immediately. I didn't know. I expected you to ruin her career after the divorce. I walked away. Ryan smiled without humor. Exactly. He looked at me again. I spent years studying everyone around me. A pause. I never understood contentment. The room fell silent. You destroyed your own life because you couldn't understand someone else's. He nodded slowly. That's true. One of the officers glanced at his watch. Ryan reached into his coat. The officer immediately stepped forward. It's all right. Ryan removed only a folded photograph. He placed it on the reception desk. It showed the Apex headquarters during its grand opening. Executives lined the entrance. Employees applauded. Evelyn stood beside him. I stood at the far end of the front row, smiling, still believing our future was waiting just beyond the next achievement. Ryan tapped the photograph. I used to look at this and see success. He pushed it toward me. Now I only see everyone I harmed. He didn't ask for forgiveness. Perhaps he finally understood that some things could not be requested. The officers approached. It's time. Ryan nodded. As they led him away, he stopped once. Without turning around, he said quietly, You were the only one who left before everything collapsed. Then he disappeared through the glass doors. I looked at the old photograph for several seconds, then folded it and placed it into the office shredder. The machine hummed softly. Some memories deserved to remain. Others only kept people trapped. That evening, I walked along the riverside. The sunset painted the water gold. A familiar voice called my name. Lucas. I turned. Evelyn stood holding a paper bag from the neighborhood bakery. She smiled awkwardly. I almost walked the other way. I almost did too. We both laughed. It felt strangely easy. We walked slowly beside the river. Neither of us hurried to fill the silence. For the first time since we'd met years ago, there was nothing left to defend. Nothing left to prove. Evelyn broke the silence first. I heard Ryan visited you. He did. Did it help? I considered the question. It closed another door. She nodded. I understand. The river reflected the evening lights in gentle waves. After several minutes, she stopped near an old wooden bench. I've been meaning to tell you something. I waited. I finally resigned. I looked at her. Completely. No consulting? She smiled faintly. No board seats. No investment firms. No. She looked toward the water. I spent so many years believing success would eventually make every sacrifice worthwhile. She exhaled slowly. It never paid back what it borrowed. The words carried no self-pity, only wisdom earned too late. I teach now. I raised an eyebrow. Business ethics. I couldn't help smiling. Life has a sense of irony. It does. She laughed softly. My students think I'm unusually strict. You probably are. I tell them the most dangerous lie in business. What is it? She answered without hesitation. The people who love you will understand one more delay. The breeze carried her words across the river. Neither of us spoke for a while. Finally, she turned toward me. I don't want another chance. I met her eyes. I know. I only wanted you to know. She searched for the right words. That loving you was never my mistake. Tears shimmered in her eyes, but they didn't fall. My mistake was believing I could postpone showing it. I let the silence settle. Then I answered with equal honesty. I loved you with everything I had. I know. I don't regret loving you. Her shoulders trembled slightly. I regret waiting for someone who wasn't ready to stand beside me. She closed her eyes. I understand. For the first time, those words were enough. No promises followed. No impossible reconciliation. Only acceptance. A little boy ran past us chasing a bright red kite. His father laughed while trying to catch up. The kite climbed higher into the evening sky. Evelyn watched them disappear. I hope one day someone waits for me again. I looked ahead instead of at her. They will. She blinked. You think so? When that day comes. I smiled gently. Don't ask them to wait. A tear finally slipped down her cheek. I won't. She extended her hand. Not as a wife. Not as a lover. Simply as someone saying goodbye with honesty this time. I shook it. Her fingers were warm. Then she let go. Without another word, she walked down the riverside path until the crowd slowly swallowed her figure. I never called her name. She never looked back. Some endings didn't need one last dramatic moment. They only needed two people mature enough to stop rewriting a chapter that had already reached its final sentence. I remained by the river until the last light faded. The wind carried away the scent of spring blossoms. Ahead of me stretched a path I hadn't chosen years ago, but one I could finally walk without resentment. After years of silence, I had closed that chapter forever, not because the pain disappeared, but because it no longer decided where I would go next. The end.